Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gaur Bhakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Okay. Okay. Technical issues here. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanam Jana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nam Shrishtam Manumapi Satchiputram Matra Sharupam Rupam Tasyagrajamuru Purim Madhurim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Giripuram Maho Radhikamadhavasam Praptu Yasya Pratitha Gripaya Sri Gurum Tam Natashmi Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nikhila Shruti Mauli Ratnamala Diti Nirajita Padapankajant Aji Mukta Kulai Rupasyamanam Paritashtam Harinam Samshrayami Anharapita Charim Chirat Karunaya Vatirna Kalu Shamarpaitam Unnatushvalarasam Svabhakti Srim Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sundipita Sada Hridaye Kandaresh Purato Vasachinandana Janulambita Bujjo Kanakavadato Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksha Vishwambaro Dvyabaro Jugadharmapal Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataru Ladini Shakti Sarupaya Gauranga Suridaya Cha Bhakta Shakti Pradhanaya Gadadhara Namastute He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karunamrita Vahine Kripaya Nijapadabja Dashanmayam Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihinaya Aparadha Lakshay Kipta Shakamaditarangamadi Kripamai Tvam Sharanam Prapanam Vinde Maste Charanarabindam Vinde Maste Charanarabindam Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Gaur Nityananda ki jai, Sri Brajanath Haladar ki jai, Srimha Bhagavan ki jai, Tirobhava Mahotsava Sri Vrindavana Dasa Thakura ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. So, okay. Pranam, good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for coming one more time. Today we are having our last meeting here in Kansas and celebrating the divine disappearance of Srila Vrindavana Dasa Thakura. Ki Jai. So the idea was to share some some words in commemoration of his Tirobhava Mahotsava, which is the way to refer to this particular type of celebration, which is somehow a type of festival of celebration. Sometimes they are called Virahotsav. Viraha means separation, and Utsav means festival, celebration. So a celebration of separation. But separation implies a type of union also. Union and separation. The very word viraha in Sanskrit, which means separation, also can mean, if you divide it etymologically, viraha. So raha means union, and B means a very special type of. So viraha means a very special type of union, but we call it separation. Because as we know, when we are in separation from the beloved, our heart grows fonder, as they say. Separation makes the heart grow fonder. So all your emotions and feelings for the beloved internalize and start like to condense inside of you. When you meet the person physically, if you will, all those feelings externalize and are expressed towards the person. But in separation, all those things become internalized and start to upgrade themselves, if you will. So there is a purpose in separation, of course. Without separation, there is no union. If you will, if you are always with the person, you cannot speak of union because you are already there. So separation and union create this unique dynamic of love. Both of them upgrading each other, if you will. So in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, we are quite keen on celebrating these types of things that appear in our Vaishnava Panjika, in our calendar. There are many celebrations throughout the year, and there are many appearances and disappearances of different personalities. And as I always like to say, it's important to try to take some time to get to know who are all of them. Because sometimes we might feel or might think, oh, okay, today, well, it's not Janmashtami, it's not Gaur Purnima, so yeah, it's the appearance of I don't know who, but it's not that important. It's not Radhastami or Nityananda Triyodas. So let me know when there's the big feast going on, something like that. But the point is that each one of these personalities that we celebrate in our calendar, all of them are like personifications of divine love. So in one way, we can say they're embodying the goal we want to attain. I mean, our goal in life is to attain prem, divine love. So if there are a bunch of personalities who have attained that, who are a very personification of that, and I'm willing to attain that at some point, I should be quite like preoccupied with knowing about who they are and what's their life about, because they themselves are like a portal into my ultimate attainment. So it's very important that we spend some time every time we have some celebration in our calendar, the appearance day of whoever, disappearance day of any great personality, try to get to know more in detail their life and teachings. So today we are trying to do that in the context of, again, this festival in separation, which again expresses some form of suffering, but as Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say, there is the possibility of sweetness in suffering. He say pain can be sweet also. He will quote a famous poet, I don't remember his name now, but he says that the saddest tales are those who tell us the sweetest tales are those who tell us of the saddest stories, or something like that. No? Or like, I don't know, in all India, the sadhu comes in the village and starts to do a 1 week narration of the Ramayana. And it's pretty tragic if you read the Ramayana, one after the other. No? When it seems that everything is okay, something else. Sita is kidnapped, or Sita is banished, or whatever. No. So the whole week he's narrating all that, and all the village is crying. When the week is over, Ramayana narration is finished, sadhu lives and continues his journey, and everyone starts to cry because they cannot continue crying by hearing that. So they are crying, but there is also sweetness in that. Like sometimes, I don't know, someone may be seeing a movie and they are crying, and if I come and enter it, why you are crying? Stop that movie. You will say, no, do not stop that movie. You are crying. No, but I will explain you later. Let me finish. And you continue like, Of course, I'm giving an example from this platform, but what to speak there. So when Mahaprabhu, these days we have been speaking of Mahaprabhu's conversation with Roy Ramananda, after Roy Ramananda established which is the highest goal and the practice to attain it, they had like some short Q&A. Mahaprabhu started to ask Ramananda brief questions with brief answers. How to say in English? Chit chat or something like that? Okay. So almost the first question, almost, not the first one, but almost the first question that Mahaprabhu asks Ramananda is, what's the highest form of pain?
Wow.
Interesting. So Ramananda replies, Krishna Bhakta Viraha Bina Dukkha Nahi Ar. Apart from separation from the Vaishnava, I don't know about any other form of pain, he says. Interesting. So our problem is that still we find suffering in other things, and we don't find maybe much suffering in the separation from the Vaishnava. So gradually we have to refine our notion of suffering. Like we were seeing yesterday at night, this video from Bhakti Bala Tirtha Maharaj, whose disappearance day was yesterday also, and he will enter the Bhajan Kutir of his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Daita Madhav Goswami Maharaj, and of course his Gurudev already passed away, so he just entered into his Bhajan Kutir, who was arranged with all the things that Srila Madhav Maharaj used, and Srila Tirtha Maharaj would just cry and cry like a baby, in front of the picture of his Guru only, and cry, Ha Gurudev, Ha Gurudev, Ha Gurudev, Ha Gurudev, and cry. But we were sort of so attracted seeing that, basically, for some particular reason that catch our heart. There was something sweet there. There was love, basically. So if there is love, no matter which form the situation takes, union, separation, pain, happiness, all the things somehow become secondary, because love gives new meaning to everything, gives new purpose. With love, you have full purpose. In Sanskrit, the word for purpose is artha, and love is called parama purushartha, the greatest sense of meaning that you can find in the human life. So actually, as Viktor Frankl will say in his logotherapy, he will say, man is not after happiness, man is after meaning and purpose. Even if you are suffering, but you can draw meaning from that situation, you will be nourished. But if you are happy and you cannot draw meaning from your happiness, there's not much purpose there. That's still superficial. So anyhow, today we are celebrating Vrindavana Dasa Thakura's divine separation, this celebration of union in separation. So some words about him, about his life, about his pastimes, about especially his authorship of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, for which he is mainly known for. But let's begin a little bit with the with the chronological, genealogical tree behind himself. Who is his mother, and so on. So, as you may know or recall, or just getting to know now, Vrindavana Dasa Thakura's mother is called Narayani Devi. Narayani Devi, who at the same time, let's connect a little bit about Krishna Lila and Gaur Lila, also who is who on each side, if you will, because also we have this type of parallels mostly by Kavi Karnapur's book, Gaur Ganodesha Deepika. So Narayani Devi is one, how to say in English, like nurse in Krishna Lila, who acted like a nurse for Krishna. Kilimbika, that's his name. There's one called Ambika, who is quite well known. She used to free Krishna. And Kilimbika in Krishna Lila is the younger sister of Ambika. So the two of them were nurses of Krishna in Krishna Lila, and they used also to eat Krishna's remnants. So we will see how now Narayani in Gaur Lila, she will somehow continue with her practice in Krishna Lila and receive the remnants from Mahaprabhu, basically. So Kilimbika is Narayani in Gaur Lila, and Ambika, the older sister, is Malini Devi in Gaur Lila, who is Srivas Pandit's wife. So a little bit of the family tree, family picture. So to say that Mahaprabhu, when Narayani, try to put a picture, she is the Narayani Devi is the son, as we will see, of what's her name? Nalina Pandit. The daughter. So Srivas Thakur has many brothers. One of them is called Nalina Pandit. So this Nalina Pandit is the is no. Sorry, I'm confusing you a lot. Nalina Pandit was married with Narayani Devi.
Oh. Okay.
And from them, Vrindavana Dasa Thakura was born.
Sister-in-law.
Yeah. So Narayani Devi, when Mahaprabhu was executing his pastime, was a young girl yet at that time. So to say that Mahaprabhu used to express very keen affection to her whenever she saw her, and especially one mentioned that at one point Mahaprabhu was chewing betel nut remnants from the Vishnu deity. He was honoring that. General Vaishnavas do not chew that, but sometimes in some occasions it is offered to the deity and they honor as remnants. So Mahaprabhu was doing that, and he gave that to Narayani Devi. So again, she was honoring some of the remnants of Mahaprabhu as she used to do in Krishna Lila. And some mention that it is after chewing this that she became pregnant with Vrindavana Dasa Thakura. No? Some mention of that is there, basically. And there's one pastime when Narayani, Vrindavana Dasa Thakura's mother, was 4 years old, that Mahaprabhu showed Mahaprakash Lila in Srivas. This is a famous pastime that is narrated later in Chaitanya Bhagavat, where Mahaprabhu for 21 hours without stop, his Mahaprakash means like the great manifestation or the great revelation. Mahaprabhu entered into Ishvara Bhav, or the mood of I'm God. He sat on the throne in the altar and started to ask the devotees, worship me, worship me. And he started to reveal himself in different forms according to the mood of each devotee. So Murari Gupta was there, who is Hanuman in Ram Lila, and Mahaprabhu will show himself as Ramachandra. And Murari offered prayers in that connection. And like this with different devotees for 21 hours without stop. So it is said that in that moment when he entered into that mode, before all this 21 hours started, he was at Srivas Angam, the house of Srivas Pandit, and he was entering into this mode and he said to Srivas Pandit, bring everyone from your family here, including Narayani, who had 4 years. So all the family was in front of them, and by this time, Chand Kasi was presenting some obstacles to the Sankirtan, as you may have heard. The Muslim governor, and they were breaking of a mridanga, and some threatening going on. If you continue, we will convert you into Muslims, and so on. So Mahaprabhu wanted to reassure his associates, said, nothing will happen, nothing to fear regarding the Chand Kasi. This is just previous to the Chand Kasi pastime when they went to his house with the torch and so on. So Mahaprabhu shared with them which was his plan for defeating the Kasi, basically. And he said, and to give you further reassurance, I will show who I am, how I will protect you. So then he shows this Mahaprakash Lila, showing I am Bhagavan, basically. So it is said that he will make animals and every person chant and fall in ecstasy, and that immediately he will give the instruction, and whoever received the instruction. So one of them, Mahaprabhu is in full Aishwarya Bhav, and he's telling Narayani, she was there like a 4-year-old girl. Try to imagine the situation. And Mahaprabhu looks at Narayani and says, Narayani, chant Krishna Nam and fall in ecstasy. That was the instruction. Generally, we don't receive that instruction, maybe to be in ecstasy, which is the button to press. But Mahaprabhu was giving the instruction, was empowering Narayani, who, of course, as we see, she's eternal associate of Krishna, so she was there already. It's not that she attained something she didn't have before; she was already there. So chant Krishna name and cry in ecstasy. So Narayani, 4-year-old little girl, received the instruction and immediately said, Krishna. And started to fall on the ground and rolling in ecstasy and exhibiting all the symptoms of prema. So this gives further reassurance to all the Navadvip Vasis that there won't be any major hindrance to our Sankirtan movement, basically. These are some of the main pastimes connected to Narayani, who is the mother of Vrindavana Dasa Thakura. So again, Narayani was, how do you say in Sanskrit, niece of Srivas Thakur?
Sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law, sorry.
Yeah. She was married to his brother, right?
No, I'm messing all the whole thing with you. Sorry, she was the daughter of Srivas Thakur's brother. So there she was.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Okay. Sorry for the mistake to all connected. Yeah.
She was married.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Right.
So Narayani was the daughter of Srivas Thakur's brother called Nalina Pandit, and Vrindavana Dasa Thakura is the son of Narayani. Then we have I need some picture with all the genealogical tree where who is who. No? So yeah. And the father of Vrindavana Dasa Thakura is called by Kuntanath Das. And it is said that he passed away while Vrindavana Dasa Thakura was still in the womb of Narayani. So before he was born, he passed away. No? And it is said that both Narayani and Vrindavana Dasa Thakura eventually moved to the house of Srivas Pandit when Vrindavana Dasa Thakura's father died, basically. So there are different opinions as to where Vrindavana Dasa Thakura was born. Some of them refer to one village called Mamgachi, which generally is the main opinion where he's born. And of course, sometimes you go to India, you have these things that you will go to different villages and you have, here was born this person. You go to another village, here was born the same person. And where? Well, here, come here. That's the donation box. So there are different opinions in some cases. And others say he was born in one place called Kumarhat. But whatever the case, it is said that Vrindavana Dasa Thakura eventually moved to one place called Denur. And in that place called Denur is what it is sometimes called the Sripat of Vrindavana Dasa Thakura, how to say?
Temple.
Yeah, the place where he established himself for mainly. Maybe he was born somewhere, but moved eventually to this place, and that was his place of residence, basically. So who is Vrindavana Dasa Thakura? We mentioned who was Narayani Devi. So it is said that Vrindavana Dasa Thakura, Srila Krishna Kavi Karnapur in Gaurganadesh Dipika, he says he's Vyasadev. Interesting. So we have the Vyasa of Gaur Lila, if you will, in the form of Vrindavana Dasa Thakura. But also, interestingly, and this is part of what Krishna Kavi Karnapur mentions, he speaks that also Vrindavana Dasa Thakura is one Gopa called Kushumapida, one friend of Krishna in Vrindavan. So he said this Gopa Kushumapida has entered also the body of Vrindavana Dasa Thakura to perform certain actions. So that's an interesting point, because as we will see, Vrindavana Dasa Thakura is totally into Sakya Rasa as well. Right. And if we connect him with this identity as a Gopa, of course, well, that's a parallel there very, very nicely. Vrindavana Dasa Thakura used to worship a pair of deities of Gaur Nityananda that can still be found in this place, Mamgachi, which sometimes some people mention that's where he was born. And the temple is under the care of Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, the mission of Bhakti Vallabh Tirtha Maharaj that we saw yesterday. Yeah? So Vrindavana Dasa Thakura is considered to be the last disciple of Nityananda Prabhu. So Nityananda Prabhu was his own guru. So I'm trying to imagine being a disciple of Sri Nityananda. So Vrindavana Dasa Thakura was his last disciple. And under the order of Nityananda Prabhu, he wrote the pastimes of Mahaprabhu. He wrote the pastimes of Nityananda Prabhu in his book called Chaitanya Bhagavat, very famous biography of Sri Chaitanya. And he also wrote a number of songs, a few of them. And sometimes there are some other books that are ascribed to Vrindavana Dasa Thakura, but actually by most of the Bodhisattva scholars, it is considered that he only wrote Chaitanya Bhagavat. More than enough. But the point is, generally, that's the book ascribed to him officially. So this is a very interesting book, and of course, we will speak about that in some moments. And it's a book where we will find, again, a lot of this personal affinity that Vrindavana Dasa Thakura had for Sakyarasa for Nityananda Prabhu, for his Gurudev, basically. As we spoke the other day, for those who may say, our lineage is only about Madhurya Bhav. Of course, it's mostly saturated by its influence, but we find here and there, Brahma. If we want to connect Narad Muni, Madhu Mangal, as we said the other day, Vyasa, Vrindavana Dasa Thakura, the very first three members of our parampara that you generally mention are somehow connected with Sakya Bhav. And of course, not only these three. So Vrindavana Dasa Thakura shows this very clear affinity towards Sakya Rasa and Nityananda Prabhu, to the point that, interestingly, if you study Chaitanya Bhagavat, in the beginning of the book, he kind of summarizes what he will be speaking about throughout the work. So he mentions, I will speak about this, then after that I will speak about this, and so on. So you have some idea, okay, this will be the main topics. So you go through the book, and when you reach the end of the book, and you go back to the summary, you're like, but not everything is being told that he announced in the beginning. And what's the reason? Interestingly, at the end of the book, Vrindavana Dasa Thakura starts to describe the pastimes of Nityananda Prabhu in such a detail, and he gets so absorbed, lost there, lost and found. End of the book. And again, this, technically speaking, is considered a defect, but in a deeper sense is considered an ornament. Because you can say, no, he announced something, but he didn't write about that. Yes, but why he didn't write about that? What's the reason? Some failure or some overflowing of divine emotion? And of course, it's the latter. So he got absorbed in Nitai Katha, and Chaitanya Bhagavat ends there. Also, of course, Chaitanya Bhagavat is very much focused on Mahaprabhu's early Leelas in Navadvip, and not so much about Mahaprabhu's Antya-Leelas, or the later Leelas in Jagannath Puri. So that is to say, one of the main reasons why Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, these are the two main biographies of Mahaprabhu. There are 7 main biographies of Mahaprabhu. The first one written by Murari Gupta, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Charitra Mahakavya. Then there are 2 written by Kavi Karnapur. There's one by Lochan Das Thakur, Chaitanya Mangal. There's another Chaitanya Mangal by one Jayananda. We have 5 there. And then Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And these 2 are for us the most important ones. And of the 2, sometimes one it is said that is the most important, sometimes the other, for different reasons. We'll speak about that also. But again, the point is that Vrindavana Dasa Thakura got so absorbed in the early pastimes of Mahaprabhu and the pastimes of Nityananda Prabhu that the book ended there, and certain sections were not described. So eventually, the devotees went to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and prayed, please complete the narration, complete and describe in further detail mostly the second half of Mahaprabhu's life, from his acceptance of sannyas till his passing from this world. The Jagannath Puri Leelas, basically. So that's why when Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami begins his work of Chaitanya Charitamrita, over and over again deferring to Vrindavana Dasa Thakura's Chaitanya Bhagavat, which is prior to his Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentioned that this, interestingly said, the Chaitanya Charitamrita deals more with Mahaprabhu's pastimes as a sannyasi in Jagannath Puri, in Nilachal, and therefore there can be accepted as a supplement to Vrindavana Dasa Thakur's Chaitanya Bhagavat. So in one sense, Chaitanya Bhagavat is considered more important. It's predating Chaitanya Charitamrita, is focusing on the Navadvip pastimes, which for us are the ultimate goal to attain in Navadvip, not Puri pastimes, but Navadvip pastimes. In that sense, we could say it's more important. And as we will see, it's more emphasis on Lila and Rasa in Chaitanya Bhagavat. Chaitanya Charitamrita, in another sense, is more important because it very clearly establishes the ontology of Mahaprabhu, like describes in detail why Mahaprabhu came to the world, which are the three desires that make Krishna wonder, I want to taste Radha Bhavan, and all this background story to Mahaprabhu's descent. This is not mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat. This is disclosed in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So for certain reasons, some may say Chaitanya Bhagavat is supreme, Chaitanya Charitamrita is supreme, and both are right, as we said the other day. So there is place for variety. That's the point. No? Variety is the spice of life, as they say. But again, if you go to Chaitanya Charitamrita over and over again, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is venerating Vrindavana Dasa Thakura. Let me share with you a pair of verses from Adi Lila, chapter 13, verses 48, 49, in which he refers to that and presents what's his attempt to complement Chaitanya Bhagavat. Chaitanya Lilara Vyasa Dasa Vrindavan Madhura Kariya Lila Karila Rachan Granta Vishtara Baye Chadilaye Ye Stana Seistan Kichu Kariva Vyakan. Srila Vrindavana Dasa Thakura, the authorized writer of the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is as good as Srila Vyasadeva. Again, this point is made. He has described the pastimes in such a way as to make them sweeter and sweeter. Being afraid of his books becoming too voluminous, he left some places without vivid descriptions. I shall try to fill those places as far as possible. So here Krishnadas Kaviraj mentions other reason for Vrindavana Dasa Thakura not overextending, if you will, being afraid of the book becoming too voluminous. We hear that expression many times in our acharyas, like being afraid of the book becoming too voluminous. I won't quote the 108 verses I have in mind to substantiate my point a little bit more. So let's go to the next stuff. Jiva Goswami makes that point a lot in his Sandarbhas. And he's right, his Sandarbhas are quite voluminous. So if he will quote all that he has in mind to further substantiate his point, maybe nobody may read the book completely in one lifetime or something. So we have some ideas in this connection here in relation to the Chaitanya Bhagavat. So the Chaitanya Bhagavat, some further words about Chaitanya Bhagavat. Chaitanya Bhagavat was originally called Chaitanya Mangal. No? Mangal means like auspicious. So Chaitanya Mangal, but eventually it was modified because there was another Chaitanya Mangal, as I just mentioned. Actually, there were two more, but the most well-known one is the one from Lochan Das Thakur, Chaitanya Mangal. So as to, for the audience not to mistake and take one book for the other, he called the book Chaitanya Bhagavat, which in the words of my Guru Maharaj is like the natural continuation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You have Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Bhagavatam. Because that's the natural sequence, as we mentioned the other day. The Bhagavad Gita concludes where Srimad Bhagavatam starts. Srimad Bhagavatam concludes when Gaur Lila starts. So one is the natural continuation. And Bhagavad Gita concludes Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. That's the beginning. That's almost the last verse of the Gita. That's almost the first verse of the Bhagavatam, second verse. Dharma Prayita Kaitavotra. Basically the same idea. And last verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Nama Sankirtanam Jasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam Pranamoduka Samana Tam Namami Harimpara. Offering pranam to Hari, who is glorified by Nam Sankirtan. That's the last verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Glorification of Nam Sankirtan. Fin, end of the book. Try to imagine. You read the whole book and it ends Nam Sankirtan. So you're like, oh, so is there any sequel to this? Oh yeah. Srimad Bhagavatam takes you to Chaitanya Bhagavat. And there you have Nam Sankirtan in every line and every page. So as we have this connection, Navadvip is connected to Vrindavan, Krishna Lila is connected to Gaur Lila. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam, which is all about Krishna Lila, is totally connected with Chaitanya Bhagavat, which is about Gaur Lila. So this Chaitanya Bhagavat again is describing the pastimes. It's not overtly saying there is you are expected to enter here for eternity. Chaitanya Bhagavatam is not speaking in detail about the possibility of eternal residence in Navadvip, but indirectly is pointing to that. There are many verses in Chaitanya Bhagavat which speak Mahaprabhu descended from his abode on earth. So what's that about, basically? No? And if you worship Mahaprabhu, you will attain his abode in the spiritual world. So what's that about? Abode, basically. So by excessive focus on the Navadvip Lila, excessive in the good sense of the term, the Chaitanya Bhagavat is pointing to this possibility. Now there is a place to eternally reside in Navadvip, Golok Navadvip, or Nitya Navadvip, as you may have heard. On one side, you can reside eternally in Krishna Lila as a Gopi or as a Gopa, and you can have a parallel existence in Gaur Lila as a Brahmin boy serving Mahaprabhu. Interesting prospect. So again, this Chaitanya Bhagavat is mostly about, it's a Rasa Shastra. Now, there's not much philosophy there. There's not much theology nor ontology, but it's just Lila Katha, descriptions of the, so it's Rasa without ontology, we could say. And Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's lots of theology, ontology, philosophy. And of course, there is description of Leelas also, but there's a very heavy foundation, philosophical, theological foundation to make the case for Mahaprabhu being Krishna, which again, is a pretty audacious project, like in the sense of, at that time, I mean, in India, you go, as my Guru Maharaj likes to say, in India, you have a new avatar at the end of the corner every single day, in the village. That this is an avatar of Shiva, it's an avatar of Mahavishnu, this is performing Rasa Lila with the girls of the village, and everyone is doing their own thing. So for many Hindus at that time, okay, now this Bengali boy, Nimai, is worshipped as Krishna. I mean, you have to make a case for that. It's not just one more of the long list of self-made avatars or something. No. There's a way to explain that. So again, that was not done by Vrindavana Dasa Thakura. That service was carried by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami. He rightly began the Chaitanya Charitamrita with his Mangalacarana. My Guru Maharaj composed sacred preface trying to explore and show what the Mangalacarana of Chaitanya Charitamrita is showing, who is Mahaprabhu, who are every of the members of the Panchatattva. Because again, they are not just some Bengali boys. No, they are Krishna, Balaram, and so on in another Leela. But you have to refer to Shastra to prove that. It's not just like, Mahaprabhu is Krishna also. Why? Because I feel. It doesn't work like that. No, like when Srila Prabhupada said, like he spoke about the spiritual law books. No, right. The books, spiritual books, like as law books, in the sense that if you are in the court and you have to present your case, you cannot say to the, how do you say? The judge. You cannot say, well, I think that and if you are the lawyer, defending lawyer, you won't say, as my Guru said, I think that my client is innocent because I really feel that in the depth of my heart. That's my case. I put my case to rest. I said, you won't refer to the law books and try to make it. No. I just feel very deeply that he's innocent. Probably you won't want to win the case like that. You have to refer to the law books. So in a similar way, you cannot come and say, I feel that this Nimai boy from Nadia is not different from Krishna. Yeah, you can feel whatever you like, but to make a whole lineage and sampradaya, you have to refer to Shastra, to the law books, to find Mahaprabhu there. And that's what our Goswamis did in so many ways, with their genius. They located Mahaprabhu in the spiritual map, if you will. And here is Mahaprabhu on this verse of the Bhagavatam, and this verse and this other verse, and put in proper context. It makes, for us, it's normal. Again, we take it for granted. We arrive and we read, I don't know, some verses from the Bhagavatam, Krishna Varnam Tisa Krishnam Sangupangastra Parshadam, which means for us it's, the Bhagavatam is speaking about Mahaprabhu here. Mm-hmm. The avatar for Kali Yuga is not black. He's always chanting the name of Krishna is coming with his associates. And for us, yes, that's the verse about Mahaprabhu. But apart from us Gaudias, nobody reads that verse in that way. So it doesn't mean that we are wrong, but it just means that we are so accustomed to how the Goswamis read the Bhagavatam. I mean, our reading of the Bhagavatam is how the Goswamis read the Bhagavatam, how they commented on the Bhagavatam, and how they have shown Mahaprabhu, for example, in the Bhagavatam. We have inherited that in our parampara. So for us, it's like, yeah, there's Mahaprabhu there. Yeah. But if you go to Madhva Sampradaya, Sri Sampradaya, Bala, they will have another explanation. And then you will realize, oh, I was taking this for granted. I was accustomed to this, but actually, I mean, there's a whole work by the Goswamis for me to imbibe this so easily, if you will. No? So there's a lot of work for us to just have the books and certain particular understanding of the Shastra in connection to Mahaprabhu. So we own a lot to the Goswamis, including Krishna Das Kaviraj, including Vrindavana Dasa Thakura. So again, Vrindavana Dasa Thakura is the Vyasa of Gaur Lila. No? So here comes an interesting question, because we know that Vyasa is the famous compiler. The very word Vyasa means compiler of the Vedic literature. So we hear how Vyasa compiled the Vedas, then he kind of summarized all the Vedic, especially the Upanishadic portion in the sutras, in Vedanta Sutra, and eventually, as the Bhagavatam himself mentions, he was not satisfied with that. He felt that something was still missing. Narada Muni appears on the scene and instructs his disciple, and he already had written or compiled some version of the Bhagavatam. But then Narada Muni came as chief editor or something and inspired Vyasa to edit the Bhagavatam that he had compiled at that time, and for it to become Srimad Bhagavatam as we know it. And as we know, Narada told Vyasa, enter into Samadhi and everything will be revealed. And you will write the Bhagavatam in that language, Samadhi Bhasha, which means the language of trance. Someone asks you in which language is the Bhagavatam, it's not Sanskrit actually, it's trance, Samadhi. You know, Vyasa has these transcognitive functions, and he could really see, as the Bhagavatam described, Vyasa saw Bhagavan, so Maya Shakti, so Jiva Shakti, so Bhakti, had a darshan of all these realities, and after that all this was revealed to him. And after compiling the Bhagavat, as we know it, Srimad Bhagavatam, like the revised version, he was fully satisfied there. So he kind of retired as an author, if you will. No? Like he composed his magnum opus, as they say. No? Like, okay, now I can rest in peace. Now he found full satisfaction. So, but we could say, as an extension to that, he was retired. Like when someone in this life accomplishes certain thing he or she wants to accomplish, and eventually that happens. Okay, I retire. I'm satisfied. But somehow in time, some even more exciting prospect comes, and you get out of your retirement and go back to whatever you were doing before. So this happened with Vyasa, Vrindavana Dasa Thakura. He was retired from his authorship career service, if you will. So you compose the Bhagavatam, as we say, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, establishes this ultimate truth that we are studying in the Brahma Stuti. And he went to his retreat, but eventually he reappeared back from his retreat as Vrindavana Dasa Thakura, to establish Gaura's tu Bhagavan Swayam, if you will. Not only Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, Gaura is that same Krishna. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this way he came back to the scene, the spotlight, and trying to establish not only that Mahaprabhu is non-different from Krishna, but even that's a long topic, and I'm inspired to maybe in the future write something about that, but how Mahaprabhu is the most upgraded version of Braj Krishna. That's said by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami in his Chaitanya Charitamrita. He describes Paratattvam Parami. He says, Krishna Chaitanya Krishna Jagat Paratattvam Paramiha. He says, Jaiha Bhagavan Swayamaham Na Chaitanya Krishna Paratita Paratattva Paramiha. Say, okay, Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, but Mahaprabhu is not different from Krishna, and there's no higher truth than him. And then he says further in the Chaitanya Chaitanya, Mahaprabhu is Paratattva Sima, which means the highest limit of the absolute. Because as we know, Krishna Lila, in the words of my Guru Maharaj, has its limits. As unlimited as it is, in Krishna Lila, Krishna was not able to fully relish everything he wanted. And that's why we have Gaur Lila. Because Krishna Lila, 3 desires remain unfulfilled for Krishna. So in the words of my Guru Maharaj, Krishna Lila is a failure for Krishna. So Gaur Lila is required to make up the failure of Krishna Lila. Because Krishna Lila, Krishna remains with these 3 desires. What's the love that Radha feels for me? What's the beauty that she perceives in me? And what's the happiness she experiences by perceiving that beauty in me? I don't know. I cannot tell Krishna. I must enter into her shoes. So Gaur Lila is somehow born from the lotus of the Krishna Lila. As my Guru Maharaj likes to say, a lotus within the lotus, if you will. So to Mahaprabhu, in that sense, it's Krishna having an experience that he's not having in Krishna Lila, basically. Some upgraded experience that in Krishna Lila is not present, in Gaur Lila is attained. So sometimes Krishna is called Supreme Person. Of course, we are speaking about the same person, so please do not forget that. I'm not just creating some duality. Krishna here, Mahaprabhu here, one versus the other. I mean, it's the same person extending. Now Krishna extending himself so he can experience what he was not able to experience in Vrindavan. And he appeared in now, which is not different from Vrindavan, but it's extended Vrindavan or Gupta Vrindavan. And Gaur Lila sometimes is called Parishishta Lila. In Sanskrit, Parishishta means, how do you say in English? Appendix in a book. The appendix or the epilogue. Like the book is closed, finished, but some afterthought comes to make full sense of the whole thing. So Gaur Lila is like that appendix that makes Krishna Lila complete. So Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I like to say Mahaprabhu is Supreme Personality of Krishna.
Is Vyasadeva Vishnu Thakur? Vyasadeva?
Well, actually, sometimes there are different things said about that.
Says something like that.
Sometimes it is mentioned that Bhagavan appeared as Vyasadeva, but more specifically, Srila Rupa Goswami in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, he describes Vyasadeva as Shakti Abhesa Avatar, which is infused with Gyan Shakti. Because Shakti Abhesa Avatar means someone who is not Bhagavan, Vishnu Tattva, but who is unempowered soul, unempowered by some particular function, a different. Narad Muni is considered also Shakti Abhesa Avatar for Bhakti.
So you would say that about Vrindavana Dasa Thakura?
Yeah. Basically, following what Rupa Goswami says, we could say that they are empowered personalities. Of course, also when we say Vyasadeva, that's another layer to the whole discussion. We know that there are many Vyasas. There's no. And the name Vyasa actually is a post. Like when you see Indra or Brahma, there are so many. So Vyasa means compiler. And generally we hear that the Vyasa who compiled the Bhagavatam, as we know, is the Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. So Vyasa is kind of the title, but the personality is Krishna Dvaipayana. So also one can make the case, I don't know, is somewhere in Shastra you say Vyasa is Vishnu Tattva, and somewhere you say this Shakti Abhesa Avatar. Maybe it refers to one Vyasa here and to another Vyasa there, not necessarily to the same Vyasa in the same case. That's not clarified in detail, basically.
So if you say Veda Vyas, then you know.
Veda Vyas still is a generic title, because Veda Vyas means the compiler of the Veda. Vyasa means compiler, and Veda means Veda. So the name is specific. That's another thing. So anyhow, the point is that Vyasa, some of the Vyasa, one of the Vyasas came back from his retirement and wrote in the form of Vrindavana Dasa Thakura this Chaitanya Bhagavat, like extension of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Gaur Lila, an extension of Krishna Lila. And also, just before finishing, some interesting aspects of Chaitanya Bhagavat, Vrindavana Dasa Thakura makes very strong emphasis about Vaishnava aparat, of course, about avoiding it. Very much throughout the book, over and over and over again. Of course, we should deal with that not in a neurotic way, because also sometimes I've seen that this idea of offenses can lead to neurosis. Like, oh, I just walk on the shadow of Maharaj, I will go to hell for eternity or something like that. And you are creating your own hell in your mind by thinking like that, and it was not intentional. No? But there's place for aparat, as we spoke a little bit these days. We shouldn't also take it lightly, like, oh, no, we don't care for aparat. Yeah, one should be careful not to go against, as we say the other day, the hand that is feeding you. Because that can make bhakti retire from our lives. Krishna in the Gita says, as we mentioned these days, Neha Vikramana Susti Pratyabhyayana Vidyate, and so on. In this process of bhakti, there's no loss nor diminution. And whatever you obtain remains with you and will protect you even from the highest danger. But the commentator said, this applies with exception of aparat. If you commit aparat, bhakti may retire. It's not that aparat is more powerful than bhakti, because there is nothing more powerful than bhakti. It is just that bhakti doesn't like to stay in a place where there is aparat. Bhakti Devi herself is not pleased with aparat, so she chooses to retire for the moment while the aparat is there. Of course, if one repents sincerely, then that's the idea. That will invoke that grace back. No? So there is a way to deal with that, of course. Over and over again, we are taught, okay, if we engage in aparat, what to do? It's not that we are condemned for eternity or anything like this. No? If we are sincerely trying to avoid aparat, there's no aparat. And if there has been aparat and we are sincerely trying to counteract aparat, there's place for that. So again, we shouldn't go neurotic about aparat, thinking at every single moment, I don't want to commit aparat, I don't want to commit aparat, I don't want to commit aparat. Better try to think, I want to lovingly serve the devotees, and I want to be affectionate, and I want to be honest and sincere and humble. The positive side, and that will automatically protect from aparat. So that said, interestingly, while Vrindavana Dasa Thakura makes this emphasis on aparat and be careful about that and try to be humble and so on, there are a few remarks that are interesting, like a little bit like maybe a little bit confusing for some, where Vrindavana Dasa Thakura speaks in a quite strong way, no? Like, like I'm ready to kick the head of that one who blasphemes Nityananda Prabhu. So if despite what I'm saying, you choose to reject him, I will kick you in your head. I was like, okay, what about that? No? How to process that one? No? Because he's speaking about be careful, be kind, be humble, do not offend. Now he's saying, I will kick your head if you do not choose to accept Nityananda. So like, what? Because on one side we have Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami's humility in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is different. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami won't kick the head of anyone. He will say, Jagai Madai Haitemoni Sipapista Purisira Kita Haitemoni Selagista. I'm more sinful than Jagai Madai, I'm lower than the worm stool, and all this type of extreme expressions that also one has to process in a healthy way. But the point is, he's not saying, I'll kick your head at any moment if you blaspheme here and there, no? But Vrindavana Dasa Thakura's humility, in this case, at least, is quite different, no? Because for us, so important this Trinada Pisunichi and Mahaprabhu is saying, be more humble than the blade of grass. So how we understand this in that context? How what Vrindavana Dasa Thakura is saying, I'll kick your head, has to do with Trinada Pisunichi. For the untrained eye, it may seem actually the opposite. It may seem like this is an exhibition of pride or who knows what. So let me share with you the brief insights that were given by our acharyas in this connection before we finish. So an interesting way of appreciating this also as a sign of very unique type of humility. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says, in connection to this expression of head kicking, for those who had no chance, no possibility of entering into devotional service, by this statement, Vrindavan Thakur has created a path. For those who had no chance of getting any service, Vrindavan Das Thakur has given that chance by kicking them. Of course, the question is how? I mean, how created a chance or a path by kicking, no? Because we may create a whole new sampradaya and just go out and start kicking the heads of people. Don't know, I'm just creating a chance for these rascals to obtain the which is, of course, who is Vrindavan Das Thakur to begin with, no? So the example given is sometimes like if an attendant or a son of a very well-respected gentleman does wrong to some person, basically, then that person's guardians will come to help their dependent, if you will come in the name of that person. Not like, I don't know, if there is a boss and there is an employee, you say, and the employee does some mistake, but he's a very nice employee and under the care of the boss, but does a mistake, something wrong and becoming, the boss will come to speak with the person. What happened? Okay, I take charge of him. What's going on? So that person, now suddenly is facing the boss. So the logic here is the same. Vrindavan Das Thakur is saying this, I'll kick you in the head. And Nityananda Prabhu said, what are you saying? He will come. Sorry, what my devotee say. Here I am, Nityananda Prabhu says. What do you need? And he will give mercy. No? So by expressing, I'll kick you in the head, he immediately is calling Nityananda Prabhu to intervene, you say? Basically, and the name of his servant, basically. No? So Nitai will have to intervene in the name of Vrindavan Das Thakur. And in this way, Nityananda Prabhu is forced, if you will, to descend and give his grace to this extreme aparadis. Because that statement that Vrindavan Das Thakur was directed to those who choose to offend Nityananda. He was not saying, I will kick the head of anyone and everyone. He said, those who choose to offend Nityananda despite who he is, all that he's giving, I'll kick you in the head. I mean, you really deserve that. And Nityananda Prabhu will appear and say, no, my servants say that, here I am, what do you need? No? Like the famous example with Jai Vijay at the pearly gates in Vaikuntha, and the 4 Kumaras are coming. As you know, I mean, many implications to the Leela, but at one point, Jai Vijay do not allow 4 Kumaras to enter. 4 Kumaras are cursing Jai and Vijay, and a big tumult, you say, is there in Vaikuntha, which Vaikuntha is known as the place of no anxiety. So again, some anxiety in the place of non-anxiety. So what happens eventually? Vishnu himself appears. No? Like, what's going on? What happened with my servants? I take full charge of what they did, something like that. So actually, although overtly it seems Jai and Vijay did wrong, and the Kumaras are better situated than Jai and Vijay, when Vishnu appeared and took full responsibility for his servants, it is said that the 4 Kumaras, who are pretty smart persons, they realize, oh my God, we have offended them. Because they are so dear to Vishnu that Bhagavan himself is taking full responsibility for whatever his servants have done. So they are so close to Vishnu. We are not that close. But Vishnu himself is coming out of his throne, out of whatever he was, to the gate just to take full responsibility for his servants. So that speaks about who these servants are. So the 4 Kumaras were like, we have really messed up the whole thing here. It's our fault. So this is the same principle, no? Bhagavan himself, the master, had to come and to intervene. So let me finish with some words by Srila Siddhar Maharaj about this same section. He very nicely describes the background to Vrindavan Das Thakur's attitude. He says, Mahaprabhu's special attention will be drawn towards them, towards those who will be kicked in their heads. That my son, the idea will be, my son has done something wrong, some damage to you. Don't take it badly, but forgive and forget now. I am giving something to you. Come. Like when you try to make up for something. In this way, Vrindavan Das Thakur has made a new path by threatening the unbelievers in Gaur Nityananda. By his strong remark of very abusive character, he has given the chance to those fellows to draw the greater and more special attention of the authority. Sri Nityananda Prabhu. No? So in this way, Srila Prabhupada used also to use some of these expressions, no? With boots, right? More specifically even, because you can kick in the head barefoot, but with boots that will be more, and that will draw even more grace from your master. So that, and as we know, when Srila Prabhupada, when Srila Siddhar Maharaj was with Bhaktisundar Govinda Maharaj, his disciple and eventually his successor Acharya, and Srila Siddhar Maharaj was mentioning how Srila Prabhupada was actually Shakti avatar. We spoke about Shakti avatar regarding Vyas. But Srila Siddhar Maharaj will extend the idea and say Srila Prabhupada was Shakti. No? That was the way also he. Srila Siddhar Maharaj says, we know at that time he was almost 90 years old. He was blind from one eye. He will not go outside of his room and veranda, basically. But he will receive all this. Of course, he was so close with Srila Prabhupada, and he will hear about all these things that were happening in Prabhupada's campaign, all this like miraculous unfolding of Mahaprabhu's message. So he was a very like introspective and thoughtful personality. So he really thought about the background of all this, how to explain this, no? Because it has such a dimension. It's like, so he naturally came to this conclusion. It cannot but be Shakti avatar, he said, no? According to what Shastra said, and the level of empowerment you need for such a result, there has to be some specific empowerment. So he said, Prabhupada, this is Shakti avatar. Nowadays, many devotees may describe Prabhupada as such, but this idea came originally from Srila Siddhar Maharaj's veranda. So when he said that, his disciple Bhaktisundar Govinda Maharaj, he asked, on which type of Abish? Because as we mentioned, there are different types of empowerment. No? Jnana Abish, Bhakti Abish, no? Different types of functions that Bhagavan is investing some power in that person for. So when Srila Siddhar Maharaj was asked which type of Abish, Srila Siddhar Maharaj said Nityananda Abish. Interesting. Srila Prabhupada is especially empowered by Nityananda Prabhu. And this can refer in many ways and has so many applications. To begin with, Nityananda Prabhu is going to the downtrodden people of society, the worst possible situation, and given Mahaprabhu and given the highest grace. Srila Prabhupada began his campaign in the West, basically. I was just there. Yeah, I was there at Tompkins Square Park some months ago and some other times before, and it remains as 60 years ago. It's full of homeless people, drug addicts, and all this. And many of them were telling me, I was there when Srila Prabhupada, when your Guru did. There were people who were there with Prabhupada. But like, oh my gosh, where are you? You don't have an idea where you, I was thinking. No? And that tree there, I mean, who is that tree? Whatever. So the point is, if you analyze, and Srila Siddhar Maharaj did this exercise, he analyzed Srila Prabhupada's campaign in detail, although he was far from physical distance, but from the news he got, he analyzed, oh, this is unfolding in a very unique way, very similar to Nityananda Prabhu's campaign. So, and of course, Srila Prabhupada showed an affinity towards Sakya Bhav. Nityananda Prabhu is there, Gaur Nitai everywhere. And also, let's kick them in the head with boots. That's also pretty much in the line of Vrindavana Dasa Thakura and invoking the grace of Nityananda Prabhu again to come and say, no, forget what my beloved servants say of the boots and all. Here I am. What do you need? Okay, here you have causeless grace, causeless mercy. So anyhow, some words we wanted to share today in connection to Srila Vrindavana Dasa Thakura's Tirobhava Mahotsava. And I don't know if you have any questions. We may have a few minutes before finishing.
I was also thinking he sounds a lot like a cowherd boy, you know what I mean? I mean, cowherd boys are from Vrindavana Dasa and Prabhupada. You know, they sound like a cowherd boy, kind of being bombastic and kind of loud and boastful, you know. But it's all a big kind of joke. It's all hasha,
Yeah, there's a particular side of their Baba which is called Judabira. Judabira, which has to do with like heroism and this like chivalry. You say chivalry? Chivalry. No. And Prabhupada was quite into that. So, of course, you can analyze that from the perspective of his human personality, if you will. But of course, we know that someone like Prabhupada was not only that. Of course, there is a human dimension even to the pure devotee, and that's charming. But also there is the transcendental dimension in the sense of his inner affinity, his identity in the lila, and how the details of that identity may express it themselves through their pastimes here. No? So this is an example of that. It's not just, Prabhupada just like to speak strongly about some things, but he was internally, he had a Gopa identity, and part of his composition in Sakyarasa is like psyche, transcendental psyche, has to do with this element of Judabira, which is this chivalry mode and wrestling and with words. And so there are hints about who is he ultimately. No? I'm saying this because you can just take that and reduce that to, you can even be disturbed by that. I think why he's speaking that strongly so many times that you can even like see that as something ordinary. Or you can connect that in such a way that he's speaking about who is he ultimately in the extraordinary realm of the Lila. No? So
he's also in the Lila, isn't he? I mean, he's right there with Nityananda. He's in the Lila, so it's not like he's living, he's writing it. He's living the Lila.
Yeah.
He's there with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's getting very fired up about it, you know. That's what Prabhupada would be very fired up, you know.
Yeah, but it's, I was reading the other day. I took the Sikshamrita of Prabhupada, which is a compendium of letters, and I've read already in the past sometimes, but I started to read it again. The section where there are many letters in connection to his god brothers.
Oh yeah.
And then again, it's interesting because you have to really understand his expressions, because and the letters are like chronologically present. So in some letters, he will speak very strongly about some good brother. Right. And maybe a few months after, or 1 year after, he's speaking so lovingly to that good brother. No? So you have to really put everything on the scale, not just say, oh no, he said this about him, so it's a demon. But then in the other letter, he's speaking, and you say, or he's being hypocrite and being dualistic. Or maybe what he spoke strongly was actually not that strongly as we can read it from here, and he actually loves him, but they're brothers, so sometimes brothers fight with each other. That's an important point, because Prabhupada said very strong things about many good brothers, but many nice things about them equally as well. So the point, brothers fight with each other, but it doesn't mean they stop loving each other. No? So it's important the disciples be careful not to interfere with that and start to act, express in the same way that the guru is doing with his or her brothers and sisters. No?
He really, there were times when Prabhupada really got on his disciples' case for interfering. You know, there's a famous example of when Kirtana Maharaj passed away. Pakistani Maharaj's right-hand man, so to speak, person that organised everything. And this was in like 1976 or something like that. So it was quite late in when Prabhupada was there. But some of the sannyasis had started politicking about something that was going on in the yoga pit. And Prabhupada, when he found out, was just furious. He was just completely furious with them, because he said that you don't actually understand what's going on. You just see something, you hear people talk, but you don't actually understand what's going on. As regards God brothers, amongst God brothers, there's a particular mood. And even though you might think, well, that isn't right or that isn't right, you're like a child. You're a baby there. So you just stay out of that and don't. He really was furious with them.
Yeah, many times he says something to that effect, like he was saying something strong and some other devotee kind of parrot the same thing. I said, right. No, I can say that. You cannot say that. No, I can say that. You shouldn't say that. That's another platform of discussion. So yes, there are different considerations as to how to relate with Vaishnavas and different degrees of seniority and Vaishnava etiquette and aparad and all these things. So it's important that in time we get also, educated about these delicate dealings, because relationships between Vaishnavas are very subtle and delicate, and it may, again, as we said the other day, it's difficult to understand the Vaishnava. So we may think we got it, and we are totally misreading the whole thing. So
people change also, things happen, people change. So you've got to even, we're at the end of the day, we are people. Some mechanical machine. We may be Nityananda Desh, but still we have our own personality. We're not Nityananda. We're Nityananda Desh. So it's a different thing, So.
Yeah, the question, comments. Okay, so we can leave here. It's almost 1 hour, 8 minutes, so 108. Auspicious to close here. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Gaur Nityananda ki jai, Sri Brajanath Haladar ki jai, Sri Bhagavan ki jai, Tirobhava Mahotsava Titi Srila Vrindavana Dasa Thakura Mahasai ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Pramanand. Vancha kalpatarubhyashta kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Ananta koti vaishnava vrinda ki jai. Gaur Hari Bol.